Hi, I'm Dr. Theresa Rueger, and I'll tell you about some research today on social rank and species-specific differences influencing cooperation and conflict in anemonefish societies. So a lot of animals live in dominance hierarchies based on size, for example, but most of what we know about individual rank-specific behaviors or species-specific behaviors is based on insect and mammalian societies. However, we do have really great, interesting societies in marine fishes as well. And so today I'll present some research on dominance hierarchies in coral reef fishes, particularly anemone fishes. And the two species I'm working with are amphibian percula, the clown anemone fish or nemos, and amphibian perideraion, the pink anemone fish. And both of those fish are ecologically quite similar. They both live in groups of 2 to 7 individuals, and they both have a very strict size hierarchy, where the largest individual, rank 1, is always the female, the second largest, rank 2, is the male, and everybody else gets progressively smaller, and those are all non-breeding subordinates. And one of the really interesting things about these fish is that they live in a very tight mutualism with their anemone host. And that leads to hypotheses like the synergistic effects hypothesis, which states that these fish groups might influence the anemone growth and health, and the anemone in turn might influence the fish growth and health. But for that to be the case, we would need to know whether these fish really do perform any behaviors that might influence the anemone host. So the first of the hypotheses of this study was whether subordinates perform any cooperative behaviors, so any behaviors that could be beneficial to the group as a whole. And then another hypothesis we looked at was whether lower ranks are less aggressive and more cooperative, because this is what we would expect based on the research on mammals and insects. And then finally, we looked at species differences. We did expect these species to be quite similar because they have quite similar ecologies. And we looked at these hypotheses using video recordings of 16 groups of amphibian percula and 12 groups of amphibian perideraion in Kimby Bay in Papua New Guinea. We scored the behaviors for each rank separately, and we included aggression, but also cooperative behaviors like cleaning and defense against predators. So let's look at this first hypothesis. Do these subordinates even perform any behaviors that you could call cooperative? Well, here's the cooperative behaviors for each rank. And we can see that most of these sort of helping behaviors, behaviors that are good for the group, are performed by the breeding pair, by the male and the female, rank 1 and 2. But there are quite a few of them still performed by the rank 3, and even sort of the lower ranks, rank 4 and rank 5. Even though these fish are quite small, they still try to help out. And now if we look at what type of behaviors this might be, here's the proportion of cooperative behaviors for each rank, and the male and the female that perform some parental care, some defense against predators, also competitors. And most of the cooperative behaviors for these lower ranks, rank 3 and below, are behaviors that are interactions with the anemone. So I call these cleaning here. And these are behaviors like actual cleaning, so picking up debris or rubbing up against the anemone. So potential behaviors that could increase the anemone's well-being. Here's an example for one of these behaviors. This is a rank 3 that is picking up some debris and bringing it outside of the anemone tentacle. So really doing some housekeeping there. Now looking at the second hypothesis about whether the lower ranks are less aggressive and more cooperative, like we see in mammals and insects. So in terms of aggression, we do see exactly what we would have expected, where a lot of aggression is done by the breeding pair and also by the largest subordinate, but then the lower ranks perform less and less aggressive behaviors. And this makes sense if we look at the targets of those aggressions. So rank 1 targets rank 2, 3, and 4, rank 2 targets rank 3 and 4, and so on. So almost all of the aggressive behaviors are targeted towards individuals lower down in the hierarchy. And then when it comes to cooperative behaviors, we actually find a pattern that is not so usual in other systems. So instead of the rank 3 performing less cooperative behaviors than the lower ranks, it's actually performing most of the cooperative behaviors when it comes to the subordinates. So we do have smaller subordinates performing less cooperative or helping behaviors. And one of the reasons for this and why this might be different to some mammal and insect societies is because these fish get progressively smaller, and the smaller fish are quite small. So performing cleaning behaviors or behaviors defending against predators might put them into a position where they actually risk their life or their well-being. So the cost of helping gets higher the lower in rank you are. And then finally, looking at the differences between these species, and we did expect them to be very similar because of their similar ecologies. But actually, we found that in terms of aggression here, amphibia and perideraion, the pink clownfish, perform a lot more aggressions than amphibia and percula. And when it comes to cooperative behavior, amphibia and percula performs quite a lot more than amphibia and perideraion. So the rank-specific patterns are the same for both of the species, but there are quite different amounts of these behaviors performed. And the only difference that we can think of really that might explain this is that groups of amphibia and percula never stray from their anemones. So individuals will stay in the same anemone for their whole life, and they will know that if they survive, they move up the rank and they will inherit that territory. Whereas in amphibia and percula, every now and then we see individuals move from one anemone to the other. So territory inheritance might not be as assured in this species, and so individuals might be less motivated to perform helping or cooperative behaviors. So in conclusion, we were able to quantify cooperative behaviors for subordinates in these species for the first time, and we show that there might actually be potential for synergistic effects happening here. Also, we found less cooperation by lower ranks, potentially because of these higher costs of helping. And we found differences between the species, probably because of these relaxed ecological constraints. But there's a lot more research to be done in this area. For now, thank you so much for listening. I'd like to acknowledge my co-authors, Siobhan, Heatwole, and Marian Wong from the University of Wollongong. And if you have any questions, please be in touch. And there's also a preprint of this study. Thank you very much.